Hey guys, today we're going to learn about angles formed by parallel lines and transversals. And to do this lesson, you're going to have to remember some of the terms that we did last time. Okay, and the first is a transversal. Okay, a transversal is the line that cuts through your two straight lines there, two parallel lines. Okay, so remember always your transversal is that line going on right there. Okay, so you always need to remember that that's your transversal. Okay, and there's four terms that you need to know: corresponding angles, alternate interior angles, alternate exterior angles, and same side interior angles. Okay. All right. So the first term, if two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then the pairs of corresponding angles are congruent. And remember, corresponding angles are going to be your angles such as these that I'm marking. Okay, or you could have several different ones. And I'll mark those in different colors. So there are a bunch of different possibilities. Okay, but corresponding angles are all those different types. Okay, your second one is going to be alternate interior angles. Okay, alternate interior angles are going to be something like this. So you could have an angle here, and its alternate interior angle would be here. Or similarly, you could have an angle here, and its alternate interior angle would be over here. Okay, so this is just what we learned last class. Okay, the next one is alternate exterior. So you have to have two angles that are outside of your two parallel lines and have to be on opposite sides of the transversal. Okay, so one might be here and the other would be here. And your other option is here and here. Okay, so these are just things that you have to memorize. Okay, your last one, if two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then the pairs of same side interior angles are supplementary. Okay, so same side interior, so here and here, those would add up to 180, and here would add up to 180. Okay, so all the different terms you've learned so far, they're either equal to each other, like these first three, or same side interior, those two angles add up to 180 degrees. Okay, so those are just a few things that you need to memorize. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go through a few examples, and your goal on these is to go ahead and find x. And we're going to have to use our terms that we learned to find some of these. Okay, so our first problem, it says we want to find measure angle ECF, or this angle right here. Okay, and we're going to have to use our four terms to figure out what possible pieces of the puzzle we can fit in. Okay, so we know that BGC, this angle right here, is 70 degrees. Well, which one of our terms can we use to find ECF? Well, we can see that this angle should be congruent to this angle by your corresponding angles theorem. Okay, so ECF must be 70 degrees. Okay, so some of them are fairly simple. This next example, you want to find DCE. We want to find this guy right here. Okay, well, there's a couple of different ways you can do it, but the way I'm going to do it is that ABC, this guy, is congruent to DCE by the corresponding angles theorem. Okay, so we know that 4x plus 22 would equal 5x. Then we can go ahead and solve that equation. So we would undo addition with subtraction on both sides, and we would get x equals 22. But that isn't actually what DCE is. Remember, what DCE was 5x, so we would have to plug in 5 times 22, and that would be 110 degrees for DCE. So we're going to get back to our algebra and get back to solving some equations, but we need to know all these four terms up here to make sure that we can set those equations up correctly. Okay, on this one, I want you to go ahead and use your corresponding angles postulate to go ahead and solve this. Alright, okay, so we've got some more problems that we can look at, and there's different ways that we can actually solve these. Okay, so we'll try a couple of different ones. There are a bunch of different ways to solve these different problems, so just because I do it a certain way doesn't mean that there's not another way. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at these. Let's use alternate exterior angles this time. We know that alternate exterior angles are congruent, so therefore you would know that this angle and this angle are congruent. Okay, so since you know that, you would set up an equation that said x minus 30 equals 75. Okay, and then we can go ahead and solve that. So we could add 30 on both sides, and x would give you 105. Okay, so every time you see an x, you know that it's 105 degrees. Okay, so if we wanted to find EDG in letter problem B here, EDG being this angle right here, you simply could plug in x and then subtract 30 from it. So if you took 105 and subtracted 30, you'd get 75 degrees. And there would be multiple ways to solve this problem. You could have solved for x by knowing that these two angles are congruent and set them equal to each other. Or you could even know that these two angles, ABF and FBC, add up to 180 degrees. And if you take 180 minus 75, that would give you 105 for ABF. And then, of course, you could say that ABF is congruent to this angle by corresponding angles theorem, so you'd get 105 again for x. So there's multiple different ways to do this. Okay, so it doesn't have to be just one certain way. Okay, let's try a few more. It says find measure angle ABD this time. So we want to find this guy right here. Okay, so we know we have two different angles here. We have BDE right here, and we've been given ABD. Okay, we know that alternate interior angles are congruent, so we can set up an equation to represent that. So we would have 2x plus 10 equal 3x minus 15. And then we can go ahead and solve this. So we would subtract 2x on both sides and get 10 equals x minus 15, and then of course add 15 to both sides. So our final solution would be x equals 25. Okay, so you have to know those four terms to be able to set up our different equations here. Okay, so last example, and then we'll be done. Okay, we want to find x and y in this diagram. In this one, you're going to have to know your properties pretty well here. Okay, so the first thing you need to know is that 5x plus 4y is going to equal 55. Okay, well, why is that? Well, when you look at 5x plus 4y and 55 degrees, you can see that they're alternate interior angles. And if this is the transversal, you can see that they're alternate interior, so they're going to be equal. So we got 5x plus 4y equaling 55. And then if we look at our other one, 5x plus 5y, that angle is going to be equal to our 60 degrees because they are corresponding angles. Once again, this being your transversal. Okay, so we got 5x plus 5y, and that equals 60 degrees. Okay, so if you remember, when you have two sets of equations and we want to solve for our variables here, we have to do what's called systems of equations. Okay, and the one we're going to use here is called elimination. Okay, so if we go ahead and try to eliminate one of our variables, I can go ahead and subtract these. And 5x minus 5x, those will just cancel out. And 4y minus 5y would give me minus y. And 55 minus 60 would give me minus 5. Okay, well, of course, you have to, if you have negative y, you want to change that to y. And our y would end up equaling 5. Okay, so we know that our y equals 5, but we also need to get our x. Okay, so if we want to do that, we can plug our y into either here or here. It doesn't really matter. We'll plug it into the bottom one. Okay, so we'd have 5 times x plus 5 times 5 equals 60. And then 5 times 5 is 25, so you have 5x plus 25 equals 60. And then you have to undo addition with subtraction. Subtract 25 on both sides. 5x would equal 35. And if you divide each side by 5, x would end up equaling 7. Okay? So then we would have our final solution of x equals 7. Y equals 5. Now, on your test, obviously you're not going to have anything that challenging, but the fact just remains that you need to memorize all these different properties that we've talked about today. Okay, so I want you to look at these few problems right here and just state the postulate that is related to the measures of the angles in the figure. Okay, so go ahead and look at that, and then we'll have some time to work on homework. See ya.